These conflicting messages coming out are frustrating White House officials who acknowledge that the president is not on the same page as the rest of his administration.
Okay, Shannon Pettypiece, thank you for that. Back again with California Congresswoman Jackie Speer now. Last question to you, ma'am. What do you need to hear from the president, and do you think you will hear it regarding the coronavirus?
I don't think the president is capable of telling us the truth about the coronavirus, and I regret saying that. I think we have to rely on the scientists who are attempting to tell the truth even when they have to contradict the president. The fact that he is not willing to cancel his various rallies suggests that he is willing to place even his most ardent supporters at risk, because we're supposed to stay 6 feet away from other persons in order to mitigate the exchange of those viruses. I think that he is showing, unfortunately, why he is so ill-prepared to guide our country during this time of crisis.
California Congresswoman Jackie Speer, thanks for your time. I know it's a busy time where you are in your home state there in California. Appreciate that. We are going to go right now, going to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that is the Bernie Sanders rally. But specifically, look at the man in the center of the stage there, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who endorsed Bernie Sanders this morning. Let's take a listen to him.
Somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. Respect me. Protect me. Never neglect me. I am somebody. Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I know I can achieve it. I can achieve a new world. I must dream. I must dream. And dream, and dream, and I must keep hope alive. 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 Never surrender. Keep hope alive. Bernie Sanders can win, will win, must win. Bernie can win, will win, must win. When Bernie wins, healthcare wins. Love you guys.
And there you heard it, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. That is a very familiar mantra. For some, it would even be a prayer, indeed, among those constituents that are there supporting Bernie Sanders. Very much appreciating the endorsement there of Reverend Jesse Jackson on this Sunday in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're going to stay following what's happening there, as well as the other rallies for our Democratic candidates around the country. But meantime, we will move after break to the fight to protect the healthcare workers from coronavirus and what doctors and nurses say they need to continue helping all the patients.
Sponsored by Farmers Insurance. Get a quote at farmers.com.
Were you planning on mowing the lawn today?
No. Seen it, covered it. At Farmers Insurance, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So call 1-800-FARMERS to get a quote.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Independence. So that's really what that plan is about.
And by the way, I was talking with a Biden aide about this a moment ago. This criticism of all.
Now, many experts predict the next gold rush is just beginning.
Power of attorney to a woman he previously dated, Deborah Chardin, who was married to another man. Durst then went into hiding in Galveston, Texas, posing as an elderly mute woman. Prosecutors revealed in court at the time Berman was shot, they hadn't yet approached her to talk about Kathy's disappearance, although they intended to. And they didn't say why Susan Berman would have told Durst they already had, but she may have been struggling financially.
The evidence is going to show, again, without question, that Susan knew her killer and that she freely and voluntarily admitted this person into her house.
Durst was also previously acquitted of killing his former neighbor, Morris Black. Black was shot to death 9 months after Berman's death in Galveston. Durst told jurors Black was in his apartment and a gun accidentally went off during a struggle. Durst even testified that he dismembered Black's body and threw it in the Gulf of Mexico, but Durst was acquitted. His defense argued with the court over what previous allegations against Durst are admissible in the Thurman case, given that he was never charged in his wife's disappearance and he was acquitted of Black's murder. But the judge favored the prosecution, saying that it does speak to motive. Durst pleaded not guilty to Berman's killing. Leland.
Good. Worth going back and rewatching the Jinx here just to get an idea of where the case stands before this trial. Jackie, thanks so much. Jillian?
In another high-profile case that has the nation riveted, Harvey Weinstein is set to be sentenced in New York in just a couple of days on Wednesday. Weinstein was found guilty on 2 of the 5 charges he faced in the state. He could now face up to 29 years in prison as a result of his conviction. Weinstein was acquitted on 3 other charges, though, 2 of which could have carried a life sentence. And the thing about this is that, you know, the show is not over for Harvey Weinstein. He's going on to face even more charges in LA. This is not over.
The show may be over for Harvey Weinstein. It's not over for prosecutors in the Harvey Weinstein
This is true.
Case. It's hard to imagine, though, now, because there are at least 4 charges in LA that prosecutors there say they're going to wait until they get the New York sentencing before figuring out how they're going to proceed on the Los Angeles case. Hard to imagine that Weinstein is going to ever see the light of day again. Forcible rape and then sexual penetration by use of force among the charges in LA.
Those are the ones here. We've got them up for you. Forcible rape, oral copulation, penetration by use of force, battery by restraint, all of them serious charges. So we will keep you up to speed on that.
All right, now to Greece, and this is setting off a debate over immigration worldwide and also has some serious implications as it relates to NATO and Turkey. The story behind these pictures when we come back.
I don't add up the years and I don't count the wrinkles, but what I do count on is Boost High Protein.
And now introducing new Boost Women with key nutrients to help support thyroid, bone, hair, and skin health, all with great taste. New Boost Women, designed just for you.
Have you ever seen something so beautiful?
Risk as people go out into the marketplace and aiming for, 5, 10.
The Trump administration has dusted off the White House press briefing room for updates on the coronavirus. Briefings have been happening pretty much every day, although a couple of them were held off camera for a good reason. It is great to see government officials taking questions from reporters, but it is also worth noting the absence of the briefing room's usual occupant, the White House press secretary. Wednesday will be the 1-year anniversary of the last formal on-camera White House briefing by a press secretary. These ended during Sarah Sanders' tenure, and they have not come back since Stephanie Grisham took over. Instead, what Grisham does is she does lots of interviews on Fox News instead. Let's talk about this and several other stories with editor-at-large for the nonprofit news organization The 19th, Aaron Haynes, CNN political commentator Joe Lockhart, and Axios media reporter Sarah Fisher. To our former White House press secretary here, Joe Lockhart. The Clinton years, the Obama years, the Bush years, everybody was having press briefings regularly. What is the significance of this ending of the briefing 1 year ago?
Yeah, I think most people out in America don't spend a lot of time thinking about the press briefing, but it really is the removal of one guardrail of our democracy. The fact that every day, Monday through Friday, someone would stand up and take all questions from all comers, from reporters in the briefing room. It's great that they're doing some coronavirus stuff, but there are a lot of other issues out there. And one of the things the press secretary does is kind of run interference or referee within. And my view is if Stephanie Grisham had been doing her job, we wouldn't be getting all these mixed messages on coronavirus. That there's a discipline that gets instilled in the government, in the interagency process, where the government speaks with one voice.
Interesting.
And now, basically their strategy is you let Trump speak and everyone follows him behind.
And try to clean it up.
Yeah, and Trump changes his mind, he doesn't tell the truth, and it's, I understand why it's hard. But it's an important thing that's gone away.
One other Trump-related story from this week that I want to note, John Bolton's book, which was supposed to come out on March 17th, it's been delayed till May now because that White House review is still ongoing. Let's turn now to the Democrats and a sense of loss in this primary season. Because look, we've seen now Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are going at it for the nomination. But The departures this week from Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg. I think, Aaron, there's a real sense of loss a lot of people feel, that this historically diverse field of candidates has now come down to two white guys, two old white guys. I love old white guys, but what happened to the diversity of this field?
Yeah, I think it really raised the question of, who was electable in this country, and in a fair election year. Electability, right? Like that word that has loomed over this 2020 Democratic primary. What we saw is that in a fair election, electability has come down to two old white men.
You said in a fair election. It's interesting.
Yes, I mean, that is really what Democrats are so focused on. They're so fearful of having a candidate that's going to be able to oust President Donald Trump in November. They say that that's their priority. And so the person that they see as being most capable of doing that apparently is going to be, a white man over 70. And that really is just really stark when you think about the diverse field that we had, more candidates of color, more women than we've ever had running at one time in the history of American politics. And yet, we end up here, barely after Super Tuesday. It is really striking. And especially when you consider for the women in particular, the idea that women are the majority of the American electorate, and yet they will not.
Now we are waiting for the approvals to use private labs and something called automated testing. At the lab I was at, they could test 120 samples without anyone touching them. We could get the capacity up to 2,000 within a few days, 2,000 tests per day, if we could use the private labs. And we're still waiting for their approval. It's either bureaucratic incompetence or one of the conspiracy theories that you hear. But at this point, we need the tests, we need the capacity, and we need the federal government to tell the American people the truth, and one version of the truth, because I think that will go a long way in slowing down the fear.
Are you at all sensing some relief at word from the government that there will be 4 million new test kits available by the end of this week?
Yeah, if that is true, that would be great. I myself am skeptical when I hear what the federal government says they're going to do. You take a situation like New York, I don't even need anything from the federal government. I just need them not to handcuff the state. I have private labs who already, they have automated testing. We can get it done. Just give us the approval to do it.
We're already becoming hostage to this situation. I was in I was in Walmart last night, yesterday evening late, in Martin, Tennessee, where I usually always get my medication. I asked the nurse, the people working in behind the counter, have y'all received any mask yet back? Their reply was, no, we do not have no mask. They went ahead and elaborated and said what they're doing. They're choosing various Walmarts at random towards who gets them and who don't get them. And I looked at the woman, I said, do you mean to say you can't tell me whether or not they're going to come on a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday or a Saturday, or that there'll be a Pacific time? She said, no. She said, we ain't had none now in about 2 weeks, and we don't know when we're going to get any masks because they're coming at random to Walmart. In other words, if they have a batch of masks, they might get them in Milan, and Milan Walmart may get them. Then again, it may be the Walmart in South Fulton, Kentucky that might get them. Then again, it might be the Walmart in Union City that'll get them. In other words, they're going at random towards who they choose, towards who's going to receive the mask and who's not going to receive the mask. And of course, naturally, you know as well as I do, the majority of the masks are going to go to the healthcare workers, those who are going to be on the front lines towards having to deal with this type of situation. So if the general public does not already have, per se, a box or two of masks, in case it was to break out in a epidemic, pandemic form, like it has in other countries, that means the general public will be left without a mask. Now, in saying all of that, I say this. I made gestures to the woman. I said, well, can't you take a woman's bra and cut it in half and use that as a mask? She said, yes, you can. A matter of fact, she goes, they're putting bathing suits out every day almost out in soft lines because summer is coming up, and you can literally take a woman's bra, cut it in half, and use that bra to go over your nose and over your mouth. That way you can prevent people from contaminating you, or you can prevent yourself from contaminating others if you do have a severe case of either the flu or the coronavirus. So there are other alternative measures out there, but people aren't talking about it. People aren't discussing these things in regard to this type of sickness, this type of disease. And it is that. It's a disease. I personally believe that this administration has failed because whenever they recognized the seriousness that was going on over in China, somebody should have looked into all these situations towards, wow, do we have enough of this, and this, towards people being out on the front lines. I personally believe that the administration failed in those areas, just like the administration failed towards having all the proper test kits. Now we don't know if somebody's just got a cold, or if they got the flu, or if they actually have the coronavirus disease. Because there's not enough test kits out there to test people to see who's got what in case there was to be an outbreak here in the United States, similar towards what has occurred in other countries. I do believe that the president, that this administration has failed to recognize the seriousness of all this, and now we're kind of left winging it, and people are having to basically use their own common sense measures towards what to do here. It's really sad. You know, I just got through having a discussion with my cousin up in Wisconsin that I think has a disease. It's not the coronavirus disease, it's not the flu, but it's a same type of form of disease pertaining to some sort of mental illness. Now, granted, he's went through life after his father died. He went through a very, very abusive relationship with his father, towards his father drinking. His father was in World War II, the same as my father. They was both brothers. But it has obviously had a profound effect upon my cousin, my first cousin, that basically come from the same DNA. I was just explaining to him that as far as I am concerned, you have a type of sickness. It's a type of illness, a mental illness. And the only way to address this mental illness that he's got, I believe, this is my opinion, is to go formally before the altar and to go back, as the Bible talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, and do thy first works over again. In other words, he has walked away, if he ever did have a true commitment with God, he has walked away from that to the point that now he's become very, very insensitive. He's become rude. He's become unreasonable towards him wanting to come back to this property and live. And we've exchanged some pretty harsh words between him and I just within the past few years, especially during the rigmarole since I've come back here to this property in 2014. As I explained to him before, I didn't have to come back to this property in 2014. I could have stayed in North Carolina. I could have stayed in Florida. I could have went to South Carolina. I could have went back to New Mexico. I could have went to anywhere I wanted to live. But I chose because God was leading me to come back here to Northwest Tennessee, to Weakley County, to 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee. Well, now since I've come back here and my younger brother has now passed away because he couldn't withstand the elements of the drama and the tension that the neighborhood had created in not just my life, but in his life too as well. Now he thinks that he's going to come back and rule the roast. I got news for Jim Boy. He's not going to come back and rule the roost with an attitude like he's got. And like I've tried to tell him, if we can't work out things agreeably over the phone or by texting to each other, we for darn sure ain't going to work out things one-on-one whenever he decides to move down here and then he decides to be in uncompromisable arguments or uncompromisable events, such as I seen his father and my father get engaged in, to the point it's 1,000 wonders that one of them didn't wind up killing the other. It was a very, very sick atmosphere that was going on right here at 291 Thompson Road and at 430 Beech Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. For years, it was going on. One sickness was elevating the other sickness. J.W., my father's brother, that fought in World War II, he took his illnesses out on alcohol towards trying to become more casual, more acceptable in the eyes of society other than just being just a cold, hard drunk. My father didn't address his sickness that way. My father was not a drunk, but my father still had a sickness based around post-traumatic stress syndrome that he had gotten during World War II. Well, one sickness helped to elevate the other sickness out here to the point that it's 1,000 wonders that not only they didn't kill each other, but it's 1,000 wonders that my father didn't kill me. It's 1,000 wonders that my father didn't physically kill his oldest son, Danny, which would be my older brother. It's 1,000 wonders that my father didn't kill Monica, which was my brother's first wife. That was my third cousin or fourth cousin on the graveside over in Kenton. There was a lot of stuff that went on in this neighborhood that never should have went on in any decent, sound, civilized neighborhood. That various people around here knew was going on. They knew that these exchanges was going on in one form or another, and they remained quiet. They remained displacing towards acting like it was out of sight, out of mind, and the whole time they knew exactly what was going on. Well, it's kind of reflection upon whenever I addressed Cheryl White, which is the wife to Ed White, about these matters. She addressed me, first of all, well, we didn't want to get our heads knocked off of the reason why that they didn't intervene. And then her second excuse was, well, we was always taught to mind our business. And I come back and I responded this way to her statement: at the expense of seeing innocent lives being destroyed, at the expense of seeing children's lives being destroyed. These people that was reared up in this neighborhood that knew the affairs that was going on, from the Thompsons, to the Willises, to the Bakers, to the Whites, to the Hills, to the Turners, to the Jacobses, to the Cobles, to the Halls, to the Harrises, to the Robinsons, to the Staggses, to the Hayeses, to the Feeneys. I could go on and on and on with various names, including the Neals over in Kenton and other people over in Kenton that had full knowledge of the situation that was going on down here in the Cydonia hop-in community in between Sharon, Tennessee and Kenton, Tennessee, but they never addressed the problem. In other words, they pretended that it was out of sight, out of mind, even though it was not out of sight. And how these people can live with themselves to this day, if they've even got a conscience. I don't know that they have a conscience. Apparently, they've never had a conscience. Kind of like my cousin Jim Boy up in Chicago, by thinking that he was just going to be able to walk off down here and everything be hunky-dory. Well, I know for a fact it ain't going to be hunky-dory if we can't get along on the telephone. Do you think we're going to get along one-on-one, person to person? These are many different sicknesses. It's not just the sickness of the coronavirus. It's not just the sickness of AIDS. It's not just the sickness of cancer. It's many different sicknesses that has inundated this country and inundated this planet. Many different sicknesses. From sexual transmitted diseases to tuberculosis to diabetes. The whole freaking planet is sick as far as I'm concerned. It's a very, very toxic environment. And those who have been exposed to the truth, that know the truth, that want to get out of that atmosphere, that atmosphere of toxicity that has now befallen a great deal of our lives, regardless whether you're Christian or non-Christian, but more so the Christians, those that want to get out of that atmosphere, they should have a right to be able to live in peace and harmony amongst themselves and get away from the sicknesses, regardless whether it be the coronavirus sickness or other types of sicknesses. And like I say, this administration failed. Yes, they did stop flights. Good for them for doing that. But there was no way that it wasn't going to be released some way or another over here. And that's exactly where it come from. It either come from boats or it come from over planes. And now it's starting to spread here in America the same way. But like I said a while ago, whenever it comes to masks, there are alternative measures that you can use, including just taking a towel and wrapping it around your mouth if you feel like that you've got the disease and you have to get out into the public. Take something, a rag, and maybe get some rubber bands and be creative and make your own mask. You don't necessarily have to have a surgical mask or a dust mask or a 3M mask like they use in paint shops, in body shops. You don't necessarily, or other types of 3M masks, you don't necessarily have to have a professional mask to make a mask to help eliminate from spreading the disease or getting the disease spread to you. There are alternative ways that you can do that. And I just wanted to share that about my cousin and kind of throw that in, that there's more sicknesses out there other than the coronavirus sickness, other than that disease. There's all kinds of different diseases out there. I myself have caught one that I wasn't planning on catching pertaining to diabetes, being under a state of depression and gaining too much weight. I think if I can control my depression and I think if I can get back in tune towards exercising and controlling my eating habits, I think eventually I might be able to control this to the point that it won't be a doomsday scenario for me towards it bringing me to a early premature death. I think, I hope, I pray. Once more, there is no guarantees in life with any of us, and we're all basically at the fate of God towards what happens to us, regardless whether we live in a big community or we're living down in a hole, down in a cave somewhere. You know, if God intends for that person that's living in that cave, for that person to catch this disease to the point that he or she winds up dying anyways, I guarantee you, somehow or another, that disease is going to wind up down there in that cave. Somehow or another, that person's going to catch that disease if it is in the cards for them to catch the disease. That's how I look at fate. What is to be will be, and if it's not meant to be, it won't be. Going back to the old hard shell primitive Baptist memento. What is to be, will be, and if it's not meant to be, it won't be. Now, does that mean that you're supposed to purposely go out here and contaminate yourself with the coronavirus disease? No, that would be stupid. That would be absolutely ignorant. That'd be like you deliberately walking out in front of an 18-wheeler saying to yourself, well, God said that he would protect me, and all of a sudden, boom, bam, bam, and you turned into mushy stuff. The Bible says not to try God whenever it comes to stuff like that. You're not supposed to deliberately drink poison. You're not supposed to deliberately walk out in front of an 18-wheeler. You're not supposed to deliberately drink a bunch of poison or get exposed to a coronavirus thinking that God's going to protect you because you purposely done that. Just like you're not supposed to handle a bunch of rattlesnakes because you're tempting God, and it says in the Bible, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. We're not supposed to tempt God that way.
They do hamstring us because they have to approve it. But I don't need CDC to run the tests. I don't need CDC's testing kits. I just need them to approve our usage of the labs and of the automated testing. And then we're all day long trying to calm people down because the fear is more dangerous than the virus. In any of these emergencies, Alex, I don't care if it's a fire, a flood, Superstorm Sandy, the fear, the panic is more of a danger than the underlying condition. Because
Now I'm going to stop right there and what he's talking about. The Bible says, going back to the point of origin, where we must realize where our Creator created life. The book of life. It says, I think it's over in Hebrews, maybe Titus, maybe Timothy, that men's hearts will fear for falling upon things that will be fallen upon to the earth. I may not have quoted that just exactly correct, but it's got to do with men, and whenever it says men's, it's actually talking about men and women. It's talking about humanity. It's talking about both. It's not just talking about men. But it says that men's hearts will fail for fear of things falling upon to this earth. Whenever it talks about that, it's not just necessarily talking about a meteor shower or a big interplanetary alignment. It's talking about the very things that we're looking at right here pertaining to diseases. For fear. You know, since the Florida massacre that happened to the school down there, many, many children have been struck with fear towards going to public schools. And a lot of your mothers and fathers, a lot of your parents out there, are starting to homeschool children now because of the fear of not knowing if there's going to be another school massacre. Whenever you get to looking at the problems that the world is addressing right now, it's not just one problem. It's not just one sickness. We're dealing with national debt. We're dealing with gun violence. We're dealing with suicide. We're dealing with Mother Nature erupting and basically having tantrums pertaining to the sin of the world. We're dealing with all of it in conjunction with the coronavirus. So please, whenever you look at one thing, don't look at one thing, but look at all the things pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy coming true. What's more, it is only by the grace of God that God gives us, His saints, the sanity and the reliability towards laying our heads down at night and going to bed in a peaceful state of mind. It is only by Him and through Him that I can even have this conversation that I'm having to you right now over these issues. Regardless whether it be my cousin, regardless whether it be the mask, regardless whether it be the testing devices that obviously this administration has failed to produce, regardless whether it be the fear of things falling upon to the earth, or other matters, other issues, we as a Christian society has this sense of peace that only the Holy Spirit can give us If you're truly born again. If you're truly born again. That's the reason why it has become imperative for people today to become more knowledgeable of God through the teachings of His Son, Jesus Christ. And that's the reason why today it is imperative that a human being have this relationship with the Creator, God Almighty. Because it's going to be God Almighty and the Holy Spirit that's going to elevate us through this darkness that has befallen upon to our society, to the point that we will actually see the meek inherit the earth. We will actually see a revival or a revolution, ultimately to the point of seeing peace and utopia on the other side of this gulf, on the other side of this haze, on the other side, through the tunnel, through the darkness of the tunnel, towards there going to be light. It is strictly going to be only by the hand and the will of God, towards people being in the hollow hand of God, of getting through this. It doesn't matter if you're the richest of the rich or the poorest of the poor. It doesn't matter if you're the smartest of the smart or the dumbest of the dumb. It doesn't matter what color you are, how much money you got in your bank account. It says in the Bible to pray that you're worthy to escape these things that are going to be befalling upon to the planet, indicating that these things will be falling upon to the planet. Worthy to escape them, or to pray that you're strong enough to endure these things, once more indicating that things will be befallen upon to the planet. This is nothing unexpected to the true Christians that knows anything about the Bible. We have been properly prepped and prepared for these occurrences that are happening. Now, I didn't realize whenever I moved back to Northwest Tennessee that I was going to be violated and hunted and taunt and stalked and messed with the way that I was messed with, to the point that I allowed for these things to become overwhelming in my life, especially of the falling of one of my own, my brother, David Jeffrey Jackson. I didn't realize that I was actually walking into the mouth of the belly of the beast by coming back to Weakley County. But that's exactly what happened. And I know that it's only by the grace of God that He has brought me as far as I have been brought through the belly of the beast, towards being able to make this video that I'm making and talking to you right now on. Just like it's only been by the will of God and by the strength of God that He's allowed for me to get through not just one trial, not just two trials, but many, many different trials that I've went through. And not only have I went through these similar type trials, but other people has went through them too as well. There's nothing under the sun that's new. We're all going through this together. Now, if we're going through this anxiety and this trauma, being traumatized this way together, how come we can't bond together? How come we can't work together? How come we can't pull together? I'm going to tell you why. It's because the people on the other side don't want to work with us. They don't want to compromise with the Christian society. They rather demean us. They rather wait around hoping that we'll die. They rather dehumanize us and demonize us and put us down and say that we're crazy or we're nuts or we're this or we're that. That's what has caused the division. It's not God's people. It's not God that's caused this division. It's the devil's people that's caused this division. That's the reason why I keep harping to my cousin Jim Boy. Hey, Jim Boy, if we can't get along over the phone towards being able to compromise with each other, towards texting and talking, do you really think that we're going to be able to pull together, being on the same property, one-on-one? To my logic, the answer would be absolutely, positively not. If we can't pull together on the phone, towards texting and talking to each other in a practical, civilized tone of voice in a civilized way. Right now, the world's in chaos. It's not just America, but the world is in chaos. There's something going on in every nation, in every country. right now, presently as I speak.
Panic people, especially in a place like New York with that density, then you have a problem. And I think part of it is you're getting mixed messages. If you're watching the TV and you hear the president say one thing and the vice president say something else and CDC say something else, they're also causing a panic. People were told they could get a test, but they can't.
Who causes the panic? It says in the Bible that Satan is the author of confusion. Who's causing all the confusion? Satan and Satan's people. The Antichrist spirit is causing the confusion. And out of the confusion, multiplies concern. Out of the concern, multiplies panic.
Can't get a test. We don't have the capacity to test everyone who wants a test. So in New York, we had to come up with a standard protocol to prioritize those who can be tested, because you can only test as many people as you have the capacity to actually test. So we have a standard protocol in New York where we prioritize who can get tested. As our testing capacity goes up, we'll open up that protocol so more people can be tested. But it's the disconnect between what they're hearing from different sources on TV and the reality that suggests to people that the government doesn't know what it's doing.
I think it's kind of like using this as the same type of scenario back whenever it was allowable, back when it was allowable. I don't even know if that word even comes together or not. But back whenever it was allowed for parents to be able to discipline their children by whipping them or spanking their rear ends. Of course, a lot of people that know my story know that military brats usually wound up getting worse end of the deal towards being disciplined too harshly or too much. But a lot of times we would do something right before the school bus was fixing to pick us boys up. We would do something stupid, just absolutely ignorant. Or Dad and Mom would find out that we had done something in school that triggered some kind of problems. Dad would tell us, get ready. As soon as you get off the bus, your ass is mine. I'm fixing to tear your ass up. I think just the thought of getting the whipping was actually worse than the whipping. Because whenever you got the whipping, usually that didn't take but a few seconds to get a whipping. Especially the way that my old man would fly into us. Of course, his mother and father flew into him the same way. But it was the very thought of the whipping that made the thought of the whipping worse than the actual whipping. And I think we're looking at the same type of scenario pertaining to the coronavirus. It's the thought of becoming sick, not being able to work, missing car payment, missing a house payment, possibly taking a chance on dying, infecting other people with the same type of disease. It's the thought of it that makes it even worse than the actual event that may be a very mild case. You don't never know. Just because you get sick doesn't mean that you're going to die. I've been sick many, many times. And because of modern day medication and because my immune system was built up at the time to be able to handle the problems that I was faced with, I got over it. Now, because of my diabetes, that may be different today, but I'm not going to sit and worry myself about it. Just like whenever I was a child, worrying about what that whipping was going to be like. Because it's tormentive in people's minds and in people's hearts. It becomes emotional. And believe it or not, your emotions can have a big effect towards you getting sick. Just like what went on in my life of being overwhelmed by all these attacks that was going on out here, and then falling into a deep state of depression, I allowed for my emotions to get the best of me to the point that it drove me down into a state of sickness. And that's exactly what Satan would love to do, not just to the individual that's speaking to you right now, but to the whole world. He would love to be able to conquer and whip us all. That way he could shake his fist in the face of God and say, see there? See what I've done now? I brought pain and injury and death and despair to humanity. People need to recognize emotions are real. Worry is real. Thoughts are real. And just the thought of something can actually be more unbearable than the event itself. That's the reason why I said a while ago, the Bible is very clear in how it says, because back then, even back then, thousands of years ago, they knew that people's emotions had an effect upon to various organs in their body. Why would have it is said in the Bible that men's hearts, meaning humanity's hearts will be failing of fear of things that are going to be fallen upon to the earth? So if emotions didn't play a part, why do you think it's recorded in the Bible that way? And I promise you, it's in the Bible. It's in the New King James Version Bible, pertaining to what I'm quoting you right now.
And in a situation like this where you're out of control and you're hearing frightening information, you want to be able to believe that somebody's in charge and somebody knows what they're doing, and that somebody is the government here.
Yeah.
The truth is, in New York, we are doing what we need to do. I've been asking private sector businesses, and I'm going to be meeting with them this week, to stagger their workload, let their employees voluntarily, some come in early, some come in late, stay at home, telecommuting, we're a digital economy, work from home if you can. Citizens are doing their part, stay out of dense gatherings. We have a situation in Westchester County, 82 cases positive, because we've seen the danger of large gatherings where people got together, several hundred, and how fast it can spread. But again, it's not the underlying reality of what happens with this virus. We have plenty of data from China, other countries. If you're not in a vulnerable population, it's not ultimately dangerous. But we do need the federal government to be more of a help, or at least less of a hindrance, I'll take, Alex.
You know, I'm listening to you speak about Westchester County with 82 confirmed cases, and yet we talk about the density right here in New York City, where we both are right now. And there's something of a silver lining that the number has not skyrocketed as one might assume it would. What are your health advisors telling you about how New York City itself, Manhattan and the boroughs, is handling this, and about how long this may last?
Good question. For the duration, they look at the other countries that have gone through this. You look at China, you look at South Korea, but those are premised on active containment efforts, right? China may not have responded quickly, according to some experts, but they...
Now look at them. They're rubbing down a disease, supposedly defecting the areas that may be contaminated, but yet now they're not wearing masks. So what good is it doing in these preventative measures if the ones that's spraying and cleaning is not wearing the proper equipment to be able to do this? If you're on the front lines, you need to have proper equipment. It's the same thing if you was in a battle, in a raging war. You don't send somebody to battle in a raging war without the proper equipment. Need to have a helmet, need to have a gun, need to know something about explosives, need to have a couple hand grenades, need to have a bulletproof vest on, probably need to have some combat boots with some steel toes on them, and you need to be physically fit to be able to fight the elements. You're not going to send somebody on the front lines to fight a war if they're not properly prepared. Well, this germ that we're fighting is a war. And I think that's one of the problems that this administration has failed to really sink home to a lot of people, is why in the world would you want to be susceptible to the disease while you're trying to destroy or divert or wipe out the disease, and you yourself become infected with the disease? People don't understand, because there are too many mixed messages that are being put out there to the general public, and the general public is dumbfounded by the severity of all this. God, I've never seen so much confusion in my entire life.
Then had dramatic containment. They basically closed everything down. We're trying to avoid that in this country, right? You could close everything down, that would do the containment, but it would also be highly disruptive to the economy, to society, etc. So we're trying to avoid that. But that's where they get the duration from. And you're right, New York City and density is a problem, but New York City hasn't experienced it because we have not had the number of cases yet. And we want to keep it that way. If you have a number of cases in a dense environment, you're going to see it spread because it communicates easily and it transfers easily. So that testing, and as soon as you find a positive person, to isolating them and find out who they came in contact with and do that investigation and isolate them, that is tremendously important. That's all the difference. That's the early containment stage. You fail at that containment stage, it spreads into a dense environment, you will see those numbers go up. That is Westchester. Westchester is 82, New York City is only 12. Westchester, which is a suburban community outside of New York City, it started with one person who went to a gathering with several hundred people, infected some people. They went to a gathering with several hundred people. Okay. And now the numbers multiplied.
All right.
That could happen in New York City.
But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, thank you so much. And I have to say, I personally am less fearful after having spoken with you. So thank you for putting a lot of us, I think, at ease and putting everything in proper perspective. Best of luck handling everything, sir. Much appreciated for your time. Let me get to all of you right now. In the wake of, you heard Chris Brown, the chair of Brady, the campaign to end gun violence there, having endorsed Joe Biden. Want to let all of you know that we are getting a similar endorsement.
This will be the end of this. Good luck to all of us. We keep saying that here at the Windmill Ministries again and again and again, and we mean it from our bottom of our hearts. Good luck to each and every one of us. And hopefully, in this life path of struggling for survival, we will make the right decisions, and we will learn from our mistakes, and we will be able to go on to the next level of elevation towards one day hearing our Maker say, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Come, enter into the joy of the Lord, for you have been faithful over a few things. Come, let me make you ruler over many. Hopefully that will be what the majority will hear, coming from the Maker, coming from our Heavenly Father, in this journey of life that is so crucial, so imperative in what we do, where we go, who we communicate with, and what type of decisions that we make for ourselves and for each other. Shalom.